On May 11th, our revolution, and we'll be showing a video of the Battle of Algiers. On June 8th, our theme is the role of youth and students in liberation, and we'll be showing the spook who sat by the door. Okay, we also urge you to keep your eyes and ears out for African Liberation Day. We'll be coming up in May, on May 22nd, so keep that day open on your calendars. It's a very important day for us to organize and to politically educate ourselves and move our movement forward. Also, Kwame Ture will be signing books, his reprinting of Black Power, The Politics of Liberation. All of you who buy a book here today can have that signed by Kwame Ture in the back. And it will be sold for $10. All right. Yes. All right. If you do not join our organization, we urge you to join another organization that is working in the interests of the people. Join Frontline Artists. Where's Zaid? There he is. Okay. You can talk to Zaid about Frontline Artists. Join the African Echoes Study Group. Who do we talk to for that? Brother Noonan. Right, okay. All right. If you like coming to these lectures every week, do the work and help African people and African Echoes and our people to advance. African people cannot survive on hoteps and handshakes. You need to join an organization. And if you don't join an organization, start an organization. But you must be organized if you are serious about moving your people forward. We direct you again to the AAPRP table. Pick up and read our literature. We challenge you to stand up in direct defiance to our enemies and join our organization. They don't like it when you join our organization. We ask that you leave your name along with a current address and phone number so that we can contact you about our upcoming programs. We urge you to attend the video and discussion programs, as they'll provide an opportunity for you to get to know us better and come to understand the great importance of constant political education. It's organization that helped the Eritrean people to liberate their land and bring them to the point of strength where they are now calling for the dissolution of all the European-imposed borders on the Horn of Africa. Pan-Africanism is on the move. It is organization that has solidified the resolve of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania and the Azanian people against the terrorist, racist, settler colonial regime of South Africa. It is the strategic and tactical organization of the Azanian People's Liberation Army that brings a capitalist apartheid regime closer to its death. One settler, one settler, one settler. Thank you. Pan-Africanism is on the move. It is the organization of the worldwide African Anti-Zionist Front that has brought greater pressure upon the illegal Zionist state of Israel to further the cause of the Palestinian people. Zionism is in cahoots with South Africa, and now they both suffer because Africans are organizing against Zionism. Pan-Africanism is on the move, but then so is capitalism. U.S. troops walked right into Somalia, and recent news reports show that they've got gunboats just off the shore to back up their ground troops. They are shooting at us. So we must organize in permanent all-African revolutionary political structures. We are African people, and Africa is our nation. Our nation is under attack on all fronts, and the people await your next move. Forward ever. Thank you.
Just very briefly, brother mentioned that I belong to Frontline Artists, but I also belong to two other formations. And one you're very familiar with, and that is the Campaign to Free Black Political Prisoners and Prisoners of War in the United States. And you know that we are constantly raising the question of our people properly remembering our freedom fighters, those who dared to stand up to defend the life and integrity of the African community by any means necessary, when a lot of us were just talking that talk and few of us were walking that walk. If we'd ever have any respect, that respect must be predicated on how we demand our freedom fighters be respected. And if there's any lesson that we can learn from our freedom fighters in Zion, that is
The
Okay. That is, they do not make that question separate and apart from any other question they do. They make it central, and they make it central and uncompromising. And I think we should do the same. Also, I do a lot of work with the Vince Ramos Brigade, which is a grassroots human rights project that has been sending people from the States back and forth to revolutionary Cuba for the last 24 years. And we learn from Kwame Nkrumah the concept of liberated zones. And if we look very closely at this New World Order agenda that we are living under, we find that in the Western Hemisphere there ain't but one liberated zone, and that is Cuba. Okay? And we need to understand who our friends are and who our enemies are. We need to stop letting this monster and his monstrous, or the monstrosity of his cultural arm or propaganda arm define for us and our children who our enemies are. Cuba's our natural ally. Bold ally did more to defend the integrity of African soil on African soil, right, than most of us ever even dream about most of the time. So we need to understand who our friends are and who our enemies are. For those of you who are interested in witnessing and participating in what it means to live and be a part of an entire society that is built on, predicated on, and will defend its own integrity to death, the whole notion of by any means necessary, well, in April you get your shot, because the 24th contingent of the Vince Ramos Brigade is going to make such a move. So if there are any of you who are in the house who are interested in witnessing such a process in a first-hand way, you ain't got to just take it from me. Check it out yourself. Yeah, the ancestor that inspires much about what to think for yourself, do learn for yourself, see for yourself. We invite you to check this particular process out for yourself. And I was just handed a note that on Tuesday, February 9th, there's a secret file on J. Edgar Hoover. There's a showing that's coming on Channel 13 at 9 o'clock. But let me say something about this, because see, one thing about individualism or capitalism and trying to confuse us, now they want to hang J. Edgar Hoover out to dry to say that the counterintelligence program was just his baby and just his fault, and they don't do these things anymore. J. Edgar Hoover was doing nothing but carrying out the mandate for the U.S. government. And it was not just the FBI. It was the CIA, and it is still the CIA. It was the National Security Council. It is still the National Security Council. It is the intelligence apparatus of the Defense Department. It is still the intelligence apparatus of the Defense Department. It was the U.S. Information Agency. It is still the U.S. Information. It's the national security state, ultimately, of U.S. imperialism. So don't let them smoke you, because they get ready to make Lee Brown the next FBI director. We told you all about that a few years ago. Okay, they got another house Negro to put you in prison when you get out of line. Understand this. So it ain't just Hoover, though we think you should check out this dog, because he is a dog, and he was a vicious dog when he came to our struggle and our freedom fighters, and what he did to our freedom fighters. But he wasn't by himself. He had the institutional arms of the state, and he was just expressing in the face and in defiance of your own rights, to your human rights. So if you want to check that out Tuesday, check that out Tuesday, but don't stop there. Thank you. We'll see you in the world.
Thank you, Brother Zaid. Sister Imani backed out to me, but Brother Kwame, I want you to know, Sister Imani came to me very quietly and said, there is no chairman in the party, there is collective leadership. So I stand here very humbly in the presence of the sisters to say collective leadership. Now that I've corrected that, I know you're waiting for the brother, but if I don't do this, Zaid will get me. In Greenwood, Mississippi, in 1966, this brother said, Black Power, and what happened? Are we going to say it? What is it? This is embarrassing. Black Power! Come on, give it up. Black Power. You want the brother? Black Power. 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 Black Power.
for us always a pleasure to be at African Echoes. It seems as if it's becoming an annual event for us. We have been asked, I assume you have received your flyers, we've been asked to speak on the fundamentals for unity, power, and economic independence in Africa. We want to make it clear from the very beginning that when one speaks of independence, one speaks of both political and economic independence. That must be properly understood. And certainly when one speaks of politics and economics, they are intertwined. There is no question about that. But also, while being intertwined, they are separated. There's nothing unusual about that. In life, everything is the same and at the same time not the same. This may sound confusing if one doesn't properly understand life's contradictions. But we repeat, everything is the same and at the same time not the same. All of us in here are the same. We're human beings. All of us in here are the same. We're Africans. But while we're the same, we're also not the same. Some of us are men, some of us are women. Some of us are short, some of us are tall. Some of us are genuinely revolutionary, ready to kill and die for the people. Some of us may be agents sent in here to suffer and make the people die. So while we are the same, we are not the same. So strong is this aspect of everything being the same and not the same, while every human being in the world has fingerprints, every fingerprint is different. Thus, while politics and economics are intertwined the same, they also must be separated. For people who are oppressed, this must be properly understood. Otherwise, it will create a lot of confusion. And the job of the enemy is not only to rip off our labor, not only to steal our resources, but more importantly, to confuse us in our very thinking. Thus, any time a people seek to be free, they must think differently from their oppressors. If you do not think differently from the enemy, you will pose solutions which will help the enemy, and while you think you're advancing, you'll only be standing still while marching time. Thus, this aspect must be properly understood. Of course, Brother Kumba, who spoke before us, and from our discussions here before, the central problem which faces our people is still on the agenda. We are a disorganized people. We are a disorganized people. The first phrase of our talk is called Fundamentals for Unity. We must look at unity properly because some people get confused on what unity is. Some people think that unity is a feeling or a sentiment. Some people even feel that unity can be found in movements of mobilization. Thus you will hear such inaccurate statements as, in the 1960s we were so united. We were not united in the 1960s. That great son of Africa, Osagyefo, Kwame Nkrumah, says that unity presupposes organization. Simply put, a people cannot be united unless they are organized. Thus, anytime one speaks of unity, one must speak of organization. And if there is no organization, there is no unity at all. Of course, there may be fragments of it, aspects of it. Of course, when we come to speak about our people's struggle, we must look at our people and their struggle. We must not listen to the interpretations from those outside. We must not even take facts from the outside, but we must look precisely at the struggles of our people. This will give us the directions. Let me give you an example. We know that all people who are oppressed will struggle for their liberation. It is a scientific law that wherever there is oppression, there is resistance. Or, in cold science, for every action, there has to be a reaction. So once the people are oppressed, there must be a reaction, resistance to the oppression. This resistance is constant, even if you cannot see it with the naked eye. Our brother the other day, same age as I, we were speaking in Baltimore, Maryland, he said, you know, Brother Kwame, he said, I was not in the streets with y'all in the 60s, I was in the Army, but I got touched by it. And I want to tell you something, since I've been out of the Army, we ain't been doing nothing. I said, really? He said, no. I said, well, it's not so. He said, we ain't doing nothing. I said, really? I said, we in Baltimore in 1960s. Yeah, I was here in the Army. I said, did you dream in your wildest dreams that in 1990 you would have an African mayor in Baltimore, Maryland? He said, no, I think about it, but we got one, but it don't mean nothing. I said, yeah, we got that, and we ain't even doing nothing. Just imagine when we start doing something. Since the 1960s, we've done nothing. They've given us 320 mayors of the biggest cities in the country. We've done nothing. Since the 1960s, we've done nothing. They've given us all sorts of visibility all over. We've done nothing. Do you know what will happen when we do something? Thus it is clear for us to understand the resistance all the time. The job of the enemy is to confuse you into thinking that your people are doing nothing, so you too will do nothing. But of course, a conscious man, a conscious woman recognize that if the people are doing nothing, they must do more. They must do more. Of course, our people's movement must be properly analyzed. A people, we say, will fight just on instinct, and certainly we fight on instinct. Since we've been brought to this country, we've been resisting without organization, just sporadic, and we've gone from burning plantations to burning cities. All of this without any organization at all. And we will tell you that without organization, the oppression continues to heighten on capitalist America. Not only will we go from burning plantations to burning cities, we will burn the nation, because the people who are oppressed will be free and will do anything to be free, including giving their lives and burning their houses. But we must move this instinct to a higher level, organized level. If not, we make errors. Bourgeois historians make the statement that history repeats itself. History cannot repeat itself. If people can repeat their errors, yes, but history does not repeat itself. Let us look at the rebellion of Watts in 1965. In 1965, Africans rose up in Watts and burnt Watts down. They created havoc in America. In 1992, the same Africans rise up on a greater level and create havoc in Los Angeles. People may think that history is repeating itself. No. The people are repeating their errors on the vastly changed conditions. What are the changed conditions? In 1965, there was no African mayor in Los Angeles. As a matter of fact, it was a white mayor, racist. His name was Sam Yorty. In 1992, when the Africans rose up, there was an African who was mayor. His name was Tom Bradley, and he came through the ranks of the police. He was a police lieutenant, because he should know about police brutality more than Yorty. But under his reign, police terrorism was higher than it was under Yorty's reign. These are statistical facts. In 1965, when the Africans in Watts rebelled, there was no African who was chairperson of the Democratic Party. In 1992, an African, biologically anyway, by the name of Von Brown, was chairperson of the Democratic Party. In 1965, when the Africans in Watts rebelled, there were no African mayors. In 1992, there were over 320 of the largest cities in this country, in New York, in Newark, in Philadelphia, in Washington, in Detroit, etc., etc., etc. Angela Davis the other day said that in all of her experience, she thinks that the Africans in America are now going through the worst of times. Someone asked me what I thought of the comment. I said, she's correct. It is the worst of times, but it is also the best of times. So how can you say that? I'm a revolutionary. What concerns me is the rising consciousness of the masses of our people, and it continues to rise at breakneck speed. With rising consciousness and worsening conditions, there must be revolution. It is physical. We are still talking about these changes from 65 to 92 to show the errors the people repeated, but to show the progress they have made. In 1965, when the Watts Rebellion occurred, I remembered many Africans in this country condemned it. Many from what they call modern organizations came before the television cameras and said, these are criminals and animals. They're spoiling the race. They're just going crazy. They're looters. They have nothing to do with political programs. They condemned them. But in 1992, they couldn't find one African to condemn the rebellion in Los Angeles. Nothing. We said we must look at our people and see their movement. From 1965 to 1992, whether we like it or not, we must admit that certain reforms were made in the American capitalist system. Certainly, when the Africans rebelled in Watts in 1965, none of them even conceived that we would have 320 mayors in 1992. It was beyond their wildest imagination. But today we've arrived at 320 and it means absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, the conditions of the masses are worse. Thus, clearly, the reforms instituted upon the people cannot solve the problems of the people. Thus, if one properly understands the movement of the people, even instinctively, the rebellion of Los Angeles tells the United States capitalist system that the reforms which you've made from 1965 to 1992 means absolutely nothing to us. The only solution is revolution. Of course, if you do not understand your people's movement, you will think that they just jumped up. You will not see progressively the movement towards it. If all these reforms, the conditions get worse, then these reforms mean absolutely nothing. Therefore, the objective conditions of the rebellion of April in Los Angeles told the entire world that Africans have been put now on the path of violent confrontation to make revolution in America as is the only solution. These are the progressive aspects. Of course, the error is clear. What was the error of the people? In 1965, we were not organized. In 1992, we're still not organized. This then is the error. Everything changes all the time, but men and women have a responsibility to become an active agent, especially in social change, for the benefit of humanity. Indeed, since 1965 to 1992, if you've been doing nothing for your people to help advance the unity of the people, then you must be blamed for the repetitive error of our people in Los Angeles in 1992. It must be properly understood. And Krumah says, unity presupposes organization. Of course, we have fragments of unity. That's why we who understand the people know that we'll be united. Our people have unity of action. We lack unity of thought. As a people, we have great unity of action that sometimes shocks and surprises us ourselves. But we lack completely and totally any aspect of unity of thought. One must come and understand this properly. In the first place, a people may come together and fight together for things they're against. It doesn't mean that they're all for the same thing. One must not get confused here. The independence struggle in Africa can be most destructive. Africans were oppressed by all the European colonial powers, France, Belgium, Portugal, Italy, Spain, etc., etc. Africans in the 1950s, thanks to the World War II, which weakened the struggle of Hitler, which weakened England, which weakened France, which weakened Portugal, which weakened all the colonial systems, allowed the Africans the opportunity to rise up for independence. One must understand properly the historical movement. The positive aspect of Hitler was that he weakened all our enemies. And when he weakened them, we just walked right up and started to knock them down to take independence. Of course, all the Africans who came together wanted the British out. Put them out, put them out. They wanted the French out, put the white man out. But not all of them wanted the same thing. Some wanted the white man out to take the white man's place so they can continue to exploit Africans. Some wanted the imperialists out so that they could create a system, a just system among Africans where there will be no exploitation of one by the other. Just simply because you're against something doesn't mean that you're all for the same thing. And this must be properly brought home to us. When a people come to fight a revolutionary struggle, they don't react against the enemy. I hate capitalism. I hate American imperialism. But I don't hate it just because I'm full of hate. I love my people. And anything that messes with my people, I'll destroy without pity and without mercy. Thus, consequently, our hatred for this system is not against the system, but it's for what we are for. Consequently, it is what you are for that will give you purpose of unity. Unity of action is powerful among us. I'm a revolutionary. Since I've been an early youth, I've been planning rebellions in this country. Last Friday night with Gloria Richardson of Cambridge, I reported to her. We used to plan rebellions. That's right. When Dr. King was talking nonviolence, we'd walk right there. The cameras were there, we'd be nonviolent. When the cameras turned off, we'd be busting caps. That's right. And so we use nonviolence to create rebellions. If you look throughout this country, you would see in Cambridge, Maryland, nonviolent movement. Rebellions were created. SNCC was running the project. If you look, Nashville, Tennessee, nonviolent organization. SNCC was running it. Rebellions. If you will look, an organizer rebellion is my job, and now in Africa it's even on a bigger scale. But I promise you that if any of you gave me the task of organizing a rebellion in Los Angeles, it would throw me. I have to take a great deal of time here, and anyone who's conscious and knows that in order to be free, our people must rebel, and we've been doing scientific study in this. If we ask you now, organize a rebellion in Los Angeles, it'll be extremely difficult. But these Africans can jump up overnight without thinking about it and do it. Let's get it on. Unity of action so strong that they bring the very United States Army and his head punk, Powell, who went to Baghdad, to come back to Los Angeles. To make a rebellion is not an easy task. To make a rebellion in the most powerful imperialist country in the world is not an easy task. Yet Africans can do it overnight without thinking and without planning. Do you know what will happen when Africans come consciously to think and to plan their actions? Because we have unity of action, we lack unity of thought. It is this unity of thought that will bring us confusion now when we come to politics and economics. I've heard many people come before us to tell us that, you know, our biggest problem is economic. We ain't got no money. That's true. So the only solution now is when we get strong economically. So we got to fight on the economic front. That makes no sense. Here, lack of analysis is clear. We do not deny that the basic problem of the Africans is economic. That is to say, our continent, Africa, is being raped, and the labor of our people is raped everywhere. But the solution is not economic. The solution in the first step is political. The solution in the first step is political. As a matter of fact, if you were to just take a cursory glance at our struggle, you would see that Africa is really not poor. They just make nonsense. Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth. The richest. Only trouble is that we do not control our wealth. The wealth is controlled by others who are non-Africans who use that wealth to further exploit us. That's not we're not poor. We just do not control the politics of our continent. Man told me Africans in America are poor. I told him, no, they're not poor. Yeah, we're poor. No. These Africans are not poor. If every African in America, when every African in America becomes conscious, and even when every African in America gives nothing but 5 cents a week to a common economic pot, we will have enough money to solve all the problems we have. We are not poor. We are poorly organized. This aspect then must be driven home carefully. Kwame Nkrumah said it best. Seek ye first the political kingdom, said Nkrumah. Once you have that, all else will fall in place. This problem of seeking the political solution as the first aspect of the proper answer to economic independence, we said must be properly understood. Even with the little reforms that we've had in the United States of America since 1965, you will see that this bourgeoisie that they are creating in Africa is a result of the political power that mayors have as powerless as they are. Because this advancement, of course, comes just from them. It is a result of the political movement that advances them. When you see a basketball player getting $1 million today, don't think that it was economics that put him there. It's a political struggle that caused a concession by the enemy to confuse us. When you see any African today making a lot of money, don't they they make money because of the political movements of the masses. Thus, this understanding that politics must come first before we speak of economic must be properly born into our minds. Not only that, if you are not properly politically organized, not knowing what to do with your resources, if you get the resources, you can stupidly spend them. I'm certain, for example, many people are asking for reparations. Brother asked, what do you think about reparations? I said, well, it's a good idea, I guess, but you know, before we get it, we got to be organized. He said, why? I said, because if they give us the money today, we will waste it on curlies and smoke. A people must be politically organized to be able to channel their economic wealth. Secretary says it best. She says, we as Africans must not do the politics of our economics, but the economics of our politics. It's a very serious statement. Most Africans who speak about freedom talk about doing the economics of their politics, and most of them, when they talk about getting some money, are actually talking about getting a piece of the pie. They know the American pie is distributed unequally. That doesn't bother them. Only thing bothers them is they're not getting a piece of the big slice. So if they can get a bigger slice and everybody else will get a poorer slice, that's their problem. They will think they've advanced. And even if you would look since the 60s, all the economic advancement of these people, what has it benefited the masses of our people? Absolutely nothing. All these millionaires we have that we hear about, they're here, they're there, they're everywhere, they're doing this. What has it benefited the masses? This is because we do not again properly understand politically. We allow the enemy to define us even economically. And that's what the enemy does, is to confuse us. No African anywhere in the world, and if you don't know the world, you know America, no African in America has ever advanced on their own individual struggle. It is always mass struggle that produces individual advancement in this country. You cannot show me one. Not David Dinkins. David Dinkins didn't become mayor because he's a good politician. He became mayor because the Africans in this country sweated, bled for political pressure, and concessions had to be made. Thus, when you see David Dinkins advance, you must not think that this is an individual advancement. You must not think, thank you. You must not think that this is he who did it by himself. He's there as a result of mass struggle. What the system wishes to tell us is that the advancement is being made, and we're supposed to believe that this mass struggle, which leads to individual advancement, is supposed to satisfy us. The only indicator of progress comes from mass struggle. Thus, the only indicator is mass advancement. Simply put, for us as a people, unless the masses progress, there is no progress at all. And the masses cannot stand up economically like this. They have to be first politically organized. And Kruger is absolutely correct. Seek ye first the political kingdom. All else shall be added thereunto. This aspect, we say, must be properly understood. If you understand properly the political movement of Africa, you will not be upset. You will see clearly Africa is moving to a unified socialist continent, and no force on earth can stop it. If you do not understand Africa, you might become confused of the blood in Liberia and the blood in Somalia. But we who understand life know that no advancement of humanity had ever occurred since man and woman first appeared on the face of the earth without the shedding of blood. This is a fact. We may not like it, but it's a fact. So strong is this that Jesus Christ himself is able to say, there shall be no redemptions of sins without the shedding of blood. Consequently, the spilling of blood does not upset a revolutionary, just like it doesn't upset a doctor. When you come and you're bleeding, a doctor doesn't get upset. He just looks properly, see where you're bleeding, how to stop the bleeding, and move it on. As revolutionaries, when we see blood, we don't get upset. We just see how to use this blood to advance the struggle. That's all. It's as simple as that. It's a scientific proposition. Very scientific. As a matter of fact, in revolution, there's no room at all for sentimentality. If you're sentimental, you will never be a revolutionary. You just create errors and cause many deaths. The blood that is being spread in Liberia, the blood that is being spilled in Somalia is nothing other than the blood that is going to cement a unified socialist Africa. It is only those who know nothing of Somalia and Liberia can be confused. If you were just to look at Somalia itself on its own, you will see that Somalia itself was divided into three parts: by English imperialism, by Italian imperialism, and by French imperialism. Malcolm X said it best. He said, all goodbyes ain't I'm gone. He said when the European imperialist power said goodbye in Africa, it didn't mean they were gone. They had already created the trouble before they left, and they would work more on the trouble before it was finished. All the attempt is very clear. They want to make it appear as if Africans are incapable of governing themselves, and since they're incapable of governing themselves, since they said that, since independence, the white man himself must come back, be in the form of the United Nations, to establish order and peace. That's all, but it's all vain. They will go nowhere. At our meeting last year, we showed the points why Europe can never unite before Africa, and before we were finished, the trouble started in Yugoslavia. We do not listen to the bourgeois press to make our analysis. We watch the movement of our people because they are the makers of our history. If you would look even at the reports of Somalia, these gang lords, these clans, they're not fighting to stay in the areas. Each of them is fighting to control all of Somalia. That alone should tell you something. If indeed they were just clans trying to stay by themselves, they would stay by themselves. But everyone wants to control Somalia. Nobody's going back to the clans. All are going to a greater Africa. The problem is extremely good for us in Africa, and the conditions are clear. No part of Africa from Cairo to Azania has not seen political struggle lead to gunfire. Every part of Africa has already examined gunfire as a means to arrive at political power. Thus in America, people are confused about politics and the gun. They think they should be separated. But in Africa, every peasant knows today that the gun and politics equals one and the same. They are more advanced than the people in America. They are far more advanced. The problem isn't to disarm Africa. Kwame is correct. Put a gun in everybody's hand, Jack, and the problem will be regulated. Every time they disarm the people. Why do you want to disarm the people? Why? In Guinea, when we had a socialist government, and when we overthrow the military regime, which we will do before this year is out, we will put guns back into the hand of everyone. When everybody have a gun, that stuff don't go nowhere. If you look, massacres only occur with those who have guns and those who do not have guns. That's where your massacres are. But when everybody got guns, ain't no massacre there. Ain't no massacre. It's even Steven. Thus it's necessary for us to understand the program we're calling for, even a political program, calls for guns in the hands of everyone properly politically educated to defend the interests of Africa. Those gangs who are bad, they have guns, and the gangs that are good, they don't have guns, and they're the ones who suffer. This question of a political program of putting guns in the hands of everyone becomes clear even before you arrive at economic independence. Those who speak of economic independence really think that we're going to push and scream with the capitalist system and they're going to give us some of what we're supposed to get and everything will go there. Sometimes you have to destroy the entire country when you fight for liberation. Haiti becomes extremely instructive here. In 1803, Haiti was the most democratic country in the world. Very well. So many people are always giving us Africans lessons on democracy. Can you take that? In 1803, Haiti was the only country in the world that did not allow slavery. The only one. It was the most democratic country in the world. And for this price of democracy, Haiti bled tremendously. It had to fight the French. It had to fight the Portuguese. It had to fight the Spanish. It had to fight the British. It had to stop the mechanisms of Americans until 1915 when they finally put their heels on there and decolonized Haiti. But if you will look at the Haitian struggle, we say it's instructive. When the Haitians decided to take the island of Haiti and to destroy slavery once and for all, the French were then dominating Haiti. Napoleon was then the lord of Europe. His armies had swept through Europe. When he heard these little slaves in Haiti were trying to question his power, he sent his very brother-in-law to go and crush these slaves. They came in big ships, the French. The slaves in Haiti watched as the ships circled and came. They waited. And when it became really clear that the French troops were actually going to come onto Haiti, the first order that was given to the revolution was burn the entire island to a crisp. And the first thing that was done in the Haitian Revolution was all the crops were burned, everything was burned, nothing but the ashes were left, and then they said to the French, come, let us tango here, because it's a life or death struggle. Of course, if the Haitians were looking for economic advancement first, they would have tried to get some of the sugarcane plantations, find things they would never be free. They would never be free. It's like some of those who say, yeah, you all burn down your own houses. Yeah, Jack, I burn my house for my freedom. I give my life. What's my house? Don't talk capitalist nonsense to me. Property is never more important than anyone's liberation. But if you're not careful, this economic independence thing will make property more important than the people's liberation. Now, I have no trouble in burning the entire American nation from New York to California for my freedom. We say, as Secretary told the French in 1956, as for us, We would rather be poor and free than be rich and enslaved. But do you know some Africans in America, to be rich and enslaved? Well, that's Of course, we know it becomes confusing because in the capitalist system, some people were killed for money. And some people get confused, but of course we know killing is the most grave offense a human being can commit. And we hope that when one kills, it will not be for money, but it must be for the advancement of humanity. Indeed, as far as we can see, this is the only justification for killing, the advancement of humanity. Otherwise, there is no justification at all. So for us, it is the political approach that must come first. We've seen it clearly here. It is not to say that once you become politically free, you will not become independent. That's not true. Cuba is a clear example here.
That's right. That's right.
Cuba is very poor, but very, very free.
That's right.
South Korea is richer than Cuba, but they are under the heel of American imperialism. Cuba is very, very poor, but everybody in Cuba is willing to defend the island to its death. American capitalism will confuse you. They say all the time, oh, Cuba is so poor, we'll get them. You don't know nothing, Jack. The Vietnamese whoop them on one bowl of rice a day. They really don't think the Cubans going to do it on half a bowl. As a matter of fact, the poorer people are, the more determined is their struggle. Get a rich man on the front line who's got a big house, big car, all this. Get a poor man who ain't got nothing. See who fight the hardest. That poor man ain't got nothing to lose at all. And if you want to fight and you're still looking at, we be careful, we did this building, why, you wouldn't blow the building up. You know what I'm saying? You be trying to save the building, and that's where the enemy waiting for you. You say, oh, you got the building. They shoot you down. If you bomb the building, all the enemy be dead. You'll be free. So this question of economics and politics must be properly understood because it is thoroughly confused among us. Man told me the other day, he said, well, to fight analysis, you need money to do everything. I told him, that's true. He said, and if you ain't got money in organizations, you can't do nothing. I said, that's true, too. I said, but as a young boy, I always worked for the poorest organization in my people. Matter of fact, when I used to walk into organizations and they were rich, I walked out quickly. They can't represent my people. Where are they getting the money from? When I walk into organizations, they ain't got no money. That's what I want. Because this is one that truly represents the people. But how can we as the poor people come to talk about economic independence? How are we going to do it? We're not politically organized. We cannot collectively pool our resources. Because we're not politically organized, how are we going to get economics? From where will we get it? Of course, the petty bourgeois element in our community, they can get it quickly and confuse us and let us think that there is advancement. We spend a lot of time on this point because we want it to be seriously driven home. For us, we must have first political organization. When we have political organization, then as a force, we can move economically. Let me just give you some simple examples. The NAACP is very weak in New York, in New Jersey, throughout the country. But I will bet you this, if in New York City, 1 million Africans joined the NAACP and were active members. I don't mean card-carrying life membership members. I mean active members going to weekly meetings like they go to work every day for the capitalist system. I mean going to weekly meetings like they go to church every Sunday. I mean going to weekly meetings. I bet you when the NAACP speaks in New York, the capitalist system would listen. It is political organization that we lack. And it's only political organization that can give us what we lack most, unity of thought. Why is this? If you will look at our community, you will find many organizations. Each of them propose a different solution. If you look at the NAACP, it does not propose the same solution as the Urban League. If you will look at the Nation of Islam, it does not propose the same solution as the All African People's Revolutionary Party. If you will look at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, it does not propose the same solution as the Congress of Racial Equality. Because if you will look properly in our community, you will see that the many organizations we have all propose different solutions to arrive at solving the problem. There is nothing wrong with this. As a matter of fact, this is most healthy for a disorganized people. Why? Because these organizations, in fact, reflect the ideas of the unconscious mass, of the unorganized mass. Go among the people who are unorganized, and some will tell you, well, you know, Ben Hooks is the best one for me. Go among the people, and they will tell you, can't nobody do the job like Johnny Jacobs of the Urban League. Go among the people that tell you, no, the only one saying something out here, Jack, is Farrakhan. That's the one who's down. You understand? Thus, if you will go among our people, you will find the same divisions reflected in these political goals. We say this is healthy. What is unhealthy is the fact that the masses of the people do not participate in these organizations which they find close to their inclinations or their thinking as the solution to the problem. This is the tragedy. Hear me well. I am saying that if we have 500 organizations in America, and even if these 500 organizations are fighting each other, but we had every organization in America a member of these 500 organizations, we would have advanced greatly. This aspect of organization must be properly understood, political organization. I remember in 1991 we had some meetings with the Crips and the Bloods in Los Angeles. It was the third attempt we had with them to have unity, the third one. That meeting, if I remember correctly, took me about 4 or 5 hours. It was a long meeting, but it was worth it. We achieved the objective. After the meeting, I had to go to a meeting somewhere with some intelligentsia, some of the intelligentsia forces of our struggle. When I got there, I was late, so the man who was with me apologized. I said, oh, Brother Kwame is late. You must excuse us. We were talking to the Crips and Bloods. We finally got a peace treaty with them. Everything is going nice. I said, brother, the man came to me and said, you with the gangs? I said, yes. He said, you with the gangs? I said, wait. He said, what do you think about them? I said, I think they're good. He said, what? I said, they're organized. He said, were you wasting time with the gangs and we're here waiting for you? You prefer? I said, I prefer to stay with them than to stay with you. He said, what are you saying? I said, listen, these gang kids, they have organizational discipline. You lack that. What do you mean by that? Organizational discipline means there's something more important than you, the organization. That's a heavy lesson to learn in an individualistic society. I said, these gang kids know that when the gang gives them an order, they got to do it. He said, but is that good? I said, it's good that they have organizational discipline. It is bad that it is misdirected. Our job is only to correctly direct it. Once that is done, the organizational discipline which they have will logically follow. But you have no organizational discipline. You don't even belong to an organization. You think you don't even need one. You think by yourself you can do so much. So when I put you in a party, I have so much struggle to convince you of the fact that there's something more important than you, your people. The brother in the gang, I don't have that trouble. Since he knows the gang is more important, I tell him, you know what the gang used to be? Now it's the people. Simple. This is the importance of organization. We as a people have no organizational discipline at all. And the capitalist system imposes this individual thinking upon us. We have great individuals. I see them all the time. They come in, they will speak loudly, they will talk about this, give us facts and all this, and then they run out the door. There's nothing left. We say we must look at our people to properly understand the problems we face. Dr. Martin Luther King was a great man. No one can take that away from him. But Dr. King was a human being, just like all of us, representing our movement. Thus, he would represent the weaknesses along with the strengths and the errors of our movements. Thus, when we come to analyze King, we don't analyze him like the bourgeois press. We must analyze him scientifically, critically. See what errors were made. How can we rectify them? How can we qualify our movement? Dr. King, as everyone knows, was perhaps one of the greatest mobilizers that this century has ever seen. Dr. King could mobilize the masses. But Dr. King was very short on organizing. He did no organizing at all. Dr. King would come into a little town. He would turn the town upside down. When he left, there's no question the signs would be down. Segregation would be finished. But there'd be no organization there. Jesse Jackson, who follows in the same trend, does the same thing. He mobilizes. He doesn't organize. What we need is organization, not mobilization. We do not need mobilization because our people can be easily aroused over anything. As a matter of fact, if you understand your people, we are the most instinctive revolutionary group in America. We rise up at the drop of a hat for anything. Police shoot a brother today, you get everybody, come on, for a hot minute, everybody jump up. Oh, the police is terrorists, the police is terrorists. Then they sit down. The police don't sit down. Matter of fact, the police already took all the photos of everybody who'd been in the demonstrations. They got where they work, where their license plate, everything. When everybody sit down, they come in and pick them off one by one. One by one. And people continue with this. Our issue come up, they run for the issue. I ask myself, what is this? Che Guevara says it's our job to start the fires and have the imperialists put it out. But if we're not careful, they start the fires and we play and fire them. We run and put them out. Of course, here, the difference is between reform and revolution. Here, the difference is between reform and revolution. Malcolm X was an organizer. Malcolm X was an organizer. Malcolm X understood the necessity of organization. When he was expelled from the Nation of Islam, before you blinked an eye, he created two organizations. The Muslim Mosques Incorporated, Organization of African American Unity. Malcolm X was an organizer. And following clearly his prescriptions, he organized one, the Muslim Mosque, only for Muslims. Malcolm was not confused. He said, this one is one for Muslims. Anybody can come. White, black, yellow, green. And he organized a political organization. The Organization of African American Unity. Only Africans can belong to that. That's right. They will tell you, Malcolm changed. You let Malcolm change. They will change Malcolm for you, but you must know these people because they represent you. And you must know them not from the outside, but from the struggles of your people. Martin Luther King was poor in organizing. He was very poor organizer. You can see it even from his own history. If my memory serves me correctly, I think it was in 1964 when Martin Luther King tried to become president of the National Baptist Association. Let it be clear to you that Martin Luther King was the most famous Baptist preacher in this country. Jackson, not Jesse Jackson, another Jackson, who was a reactionary, he was head of the National Baptist. Nobody knew him. In the struggle for presidency, if my memory serves it correctly, yes, my memory does serve it correctly, a man was even killed in the struggle, fell off the stage, was killed. I remember Muhammad speaks, laughed at that. He said, yeah, look at these Baptists, that's how they do it. Yes. And with all this, Dr. King never became president of the National Baptist Association. Even though he wanted to be, he never did because he had no organizational skills. It wasn't that Dr. King was short on organizing in the sense that he didn't see the importance of it because of his goals in the beginning. Dr. King was a reformist. He didn't look for power. He thought, listen, Kwame, these people here, this Jim Clark, these people in the South, they don't know any better. When we come and we show them better, they'll do better. Fine, Dr. King. So for him, there's no need to get any big organization or power to take them over. It's just to show them how they've been incorrect, they will become correct, and they can still stay in power. So there's no need here for organization. This is a fact. In fact, this is Dr. King's approach. If you look at the very beginning, Dr. King praised the federal government all the time. When Stick was attacking him, he said, don't do that. He said, Dr. King, these are pigs. They ain't pigs like Jim Clark. No, there's a difference here. Because the federal would come here and clean up the local. He actually believed that. Of course, he corrected the error. Before he died, he was going for the government straight on his poor people's campaign. And the die had already been cast with the Vietnam War, because when he came out against Vietnam, J. Edgar Hoover said, I told you he was a communist. Now he got to be killed. So King himself was progressing, but before he could progress to become properly an organizer to correct the errors that he corrected, that is to say, it's not a moral question, it's really a question of power, and we need an organization to seize power, not moral struggle to influence those in power. Of course, by that time he was assassinated. Malcolm X, we said, was an organizer, but Malcolm X was assassinated when he just started to build organizations. The enemy does not sleep. The enemy knew that if they let Malcolm X get this organization off the ground, they will never be able to stop that. So Malcolm X was just at the beginning of organizations when they hit him. It must be instructive to all of us, at least it was instructive to me. When I was expelled from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, I looked around and said, I said, look at this. Well. But of course, being an organizer, always kept my ear to the ground, and I've always known as an organizer, me by myself, I can't do nothing. You can do a lot by yourself, as Matt Jones said the other night, but one thing you cannot do by yourself is struggle for your people. The people people got to struggle. Even if you're the best one, you love the people, you want to take all the bullets for the people. Superman only exists in the minds of Hollywood writers. Rambo will only exist on the screen. There's no one man or no one woman that can free us. Only us will free us. Only us. From the time I've been a young man, I have always belonged to an organization. From the time I've been a young man, I've always belonged to an organization. When the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was getting ready to expel me, I was already a member of the Black Panther Party. Matter of fact, when they expelled me, I was the honorary prime minister of the Black Panther Party, and they had some crazy brothers up in there and crazy sisters. And I knew the pigs knew, you shoot me, Jack, these people can jump up against you, you understand? Your protection is not bodyguards, your protection is the masses of the people, and the more organized they are, the more protected you are. I'm going to get carried away. Think you get a lot of money, you get some bodyguards, you could be a look out here, they blow Kennedy away. What you talking about? All they do is blow you and the bodyguards away. So instead of just you, you're taking 5 people with you. And indeed, the political consequence of any revolutionary in his death is one question. Does your blood nourish the revolution?
Yes, sir.
It is in this light that revolutionaries are never afraid of death. I work hard against these enemies, Jack. I don't even sleep half the time, you understand? But if they think I'm bad against them now, kill me. My blood will nourish this revolution like you've never seen. That's why for revolutionaries, death is always a welcome sight. For the people, look at it. Brothers die for nothing. Let me die for the people, please. They'll say my name for the rest of my life. Look at Martin Luther King. Everybody will praise him. Many brothers died the same day King died. Some were even shot by others. Nobody will know them. Nobody will ever know them. But everybody will know King because everybody knew whenever King took a bullet, that bullet was for his people. See, this understanding of organization is crucial. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference itself, you see, is also about falling apart because it was more mobilized than organized. But the Nation of Islam, to which Malcolm X gave a lot of his blood, and even though he left it, is still functioning thanks to the work of Malcolm. Organization continues your work. Organization continues your work. We've had great individuals, I mean great ones, who've done so much, and even here, they're here today. They speak so much, they give us African history, they give us this, they give us that. When they die, the only thing they remember is they wrote a book. This is the book they wrote. What did they do to organize the people? Nothing. Why did they do nothing? Because they thought they didn't need an organization, because after all, I mean, ever since I've been 16 years old, I've been in organizations. When I got ready to resign from the Black Panther Party, before I resigned, I was a member of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. When I handed my resignation, I said, don't do that. Now they got you. I said, no, they don't. I'm a member of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. I'm protected by Secretary and Kwame I got all Guinea behind me. They could not touch me now. They shoot me now. My blood will nourish Africa like they've never seen. It is organization, and only organization, that gives us clear guidance. My task in struggle with political organization has reached one of the highest positions today. I am a political advisor to the Democratic Party of Guinea, the party secretary of Guinea. This party is involved in political struggle to overthrow a military regime, which must give up power this year. They themselves had to unban our party, which they banned. And after unbanning our party in April of last year, they proposed a date of December 27th for elections. In October, they saw there was no way for them to win. They saw clearly that our party would take power. They, being controlled like the French today, the French being stupid, did the same thing they did in Algeria. They postponed the election. But the postponement of the election only shows clear defeat. Thus, this year is the task of our party to restructure itself and to take power by any means necessary. Organization. Thus, first to have the fundamentals for unity, power, economic independence in Africa, we must have political organization. Now, this political organization is clear. If you will look throughout the world, scientifically speaking, at political organizations, you will find outside of Africa, all political parties are vanguard parties. A vanguard party is a party which takes a small percentage of the society, the most conscious. They become to the party and they work for the people. Africa has presented to the world the mass party. The mass party says everybody in the country has a responsibility to the country and must be doing something political. The other day when talking to a journalist, I said, I'm for forcing people to get into political organizations. He said, you're going to force people to get into political organizations? I said, oh yeah. He said, you're going to just do that? I said, do you force them to go to school? Do you not have compulsory education? Do you not force them to pay taxes? Who are you playing with? You think they're going to do what we play with? Yes. If I had the power in my society, everybody must belong to a political organization because it directs your life. And at least if you're against it, you ought to know why. And then you ought to know how to fight. Of course, we haven't reached that stage yet, but we are getting there. Our point now is through moral persuasion and logic and reason to show the people that really the problem that we have our people is just one, we're disorganized. And organization doesn't mean mobilization. I am sure here at African Echoes, there are people who come here every week, listen to the speakers, clap, go back, and never do any organizing work for the people, except to come every Sunday. Even the Bible says it is more blessed to give than to receive. And when you give for the people whom God has created, there is nothing more blessed than that. We said in order to be unity, there must be organization. And the organization says give you political thought. It does. If you're a member of the Nation of Islam, and you're a member of the Nation of Islam, and I ask you certain questions, you respond differently. If you're a member of the Nation of Islam, and I ask you, do you think that all of us should be integrated in the American capitalist system? You say yes. If you're a member of the Nation of Islam, no, we got to separate. You won't even let me finish. You're a member, no, sir. Honorable Muhammad says we must separate. Allah Akbar. Yes. Thus, the organization gives you political thought, even if you're unaware of it. But a member of the Urban League will never have the same position as a member of the Nation of Islam on the question of army in the United States of America. One will say join the army, the other will say destroy it. Thus you do get political thought. And you must understand it. What the enemy seeks to stop is to have us get political thought. Because while we have unity of action, we have no thought. And it is thought that must come to help clarify and qualify action. If there's no thought process, the action is the same. Thus from 1965 and once to 1992, there have been no thought process, no universal thought process by the masses, thus the action remains the same. You have a responsibility then to your people. Africa, we tell everyone will be free, unified, and socialist. No force on earth can stop it. Anyone looking at the march of our people will see this, not confused by the capitalist press, whose job it is to let us believe that we are so unstable, that there's total insecurity in our community. I mean, if you listen to them, you won't even go out. And this is their job. Their job is to make each and every one of us the enemy of each and every one of us. So when you walk down the street, you no longer say, hey brother, what's happening? You're afraid, you know. Oh my God. The only way this can be combated is through mass political organization. The only way this can be combated is through mass political organization. I think we're about at the conclusion. Fundamentals for unity presupposes organization. Now we did say one thing, and this is a point we must hammer home. We said that when you think, you must think differently from the enemy. The confusion is here. Many Africans in America actually think, and even some who call themselves revolutionary and Marxist-Leninists say that we Africans in America have the same culture like other people in America. And they say it. This is a great error. This causes a great deal of confusion. Secretary says, à chaque peuple sa culture. Every people have their culture. As a matter of fact, our culture has been in conflict with the American capitalist culture and continues to be and will be until we destroy it. If you're not thinking clearly about your culture, you'll bring big errors. I'll give you an example. People have a problem with gay rights and gay and lesbian rights. Mandela said, you know, how come I hear you speak? I never hear you speak about gay and lesbian rights. I said, that's right. He said, but I go, all the others, they speak about it. I said, we are not from the same political platform. I fight for my people's culture. I know they have one. My job is every day to more properly define it and to fight from it. You think we don't have one, so you fight from a capitalist culture. You'll never get anywhere. Africa has a culture of its own. And her people are the carriers of that culture. And anyone who knows anything about culture, when it's attacked, Jack, the people hide it from themselves. Malcolm X said it. He said, they don't call themselves Africans, but you scratch them a little bit, you'll see how African they are. They've hidden Africa from themselves. That is to say, the people seeing the enemy overwhelm them will hide the very culture from the people themselves. The conscious element will come to see how they've hid it, to pick it up. Let me give examples on homosexuality. If you will look at the history of Europe, and you know the first law is always to know the enemy. You will see Europe has a bloody history on the relationship of homosexuality, from Greece all the way down to today, where they bash in the heads of homosexualities. Africa has none of this. Even Africans in America do not bash in the heads of homosexuals. The question of homosexuality is a question of intolerance. Europe's culture is most intolerant. It's really a culture that has no diversity. It seeks conformity. In the 1960s, if you would go to white colleges, all the white boys on there were wearing crew cuts and sandal shoes. They all look alike. The other day I saw one wearing long hair. He said, what did you do for me anyway? I said, made it possible for you to wear long hair. Yes, broke up the conformity. It's most intolerant. It's most intolerant. African culture is very tolerant. As a matter of fact, that's why we're the trouble we're in today. I remember as a young tough in Harlem, I used to go to the Audubon Ballroom where Malcolm was assassinated. I used to go to Rockland Palace, and if my memory serves me correctly, it used to happen in April. It still happens. All the homosexuals in the African community, and they put up signs, and I see them now. They have a big transvestite ball. And they would come at Rockland Palace, we were tough, 15, 16 armed. But wouldn't anybody think about hitting any of them. The best we could say is, you really think that one is a woman? Yes. No, none whatsoever. The hardest organization in our community against homosexuality is the Nation of Islam. You hear Minister Farrakhan now saying, you better tell them they got to straighten up their wrists. Yes. But everyone knows James Baldwin. And James Baldwin, no African ever hid their homosexuality. James Baldwin was a homosexual. And yet you would hear Malcolm X and Farrakhan praising James Baldwin for his contribution to the struggle. So if you will look at us, we're not an intolerant people. It's not in our culture. So to bring this problem, which is a European cultural problem, into our community is only to bring us more problems, and we got more than they have anyway. So I told the man, I'm very sorry. This is not a problem for our culture. It is a problem for your culture, and we can help and give you tactics and strategies on how to raise civil disobedience, because we are experts at that. Just to give you examples, one more. All women are oppressed everywhere. This is a fact. African men, we oppress our women. There's no question here. But in order to properly understand the oppression of each woman, you must understand their particular history. Africa produced the very first queens in the world. And these queens were not play queens. They had proper power. Dr. Henry Clark has written a small pamphlet, the title has escaped me, in which he talks about the contribution of queens. It's a very small pamphlet, I'm sorry, the title has escaped me, I read so much. But in the book, the pamphlet, Dr. Clark shows and demonstrates that every time a queen occupied the throne in Africa, Africa advanced technologically, socially, politically, economically. And if a queen was on the throne and the enemy invaded, there was no compromise at all. No. These are historical facts. We say African women are exploited today, oppressed today. Yes, they are. African men exploit their women everywhere, but the one place they can never exploit the women is on the front lines fighting for the people. If you will look at the history of Africa, you will see women on the front lines all the way from the first queens, all the way down through Nzinga, all the way to Asate Shaku on the front lines fighting for the people. No other race has produced women warriors as we have for the entire world, even though they are warriors. I heard much nonsense about the 60s from those who've done nothing but write books. Chinese say, no participation, no right to thank you. No participation, no right to speak. If you haven't participated in something, really you can't speak about it, because what you observe and what you see and what is not the same thing. I've heard them say that women play no role in the struggle. How could they say that about us? Say that women are oppressed. Yes, our women are oppressed. But to say that our women play no role in the struggle, sure, nobody knows what they're talking about. As a matter of fact, they talk about the 60s. Martin Luther King got up because the woman sat down. Rosa Parks. It was Rosa Parks that put us on our feet. Where'd they come from? It was Rosa Parks. And Rosa Parks wasn't just some little seamstress. She was an organizer, secretary for the movement of the NAACP. She's an organizer. People say the first organization out, she was a student of the committee. It was founded by a woman, Ella Baker. When I was chairperson of STIT, my position was the most public, but the most powerful position was the executive secretary. It was held by a woman, Ruby Doris Smith Robinson. Just because you don't know your history and you don't know your culture, you shouldn't respond. If you're ignorant, you should seek knowledge before you answer. And the people, Africans, we know nothing about our struggle. It's these interpretations brought to us that we repeat like a parrot without knowing anything. Even the Black Panther Party, which they speak about, people didn't know that Elaine Brown, a woman, was chairperson of the party. And anyone who knows anything about the history knows that the most militant segment of the Black Panther Party was the Black Liberation Army. And everyone knows it was led by a woman, Asante Shakur. Even if they didn't know it, the police knew it. Because the police used to say everywhere, we got to get her because she's the soul of the liberation. Once we get her, she's finished. They're finished. That's what they said. And once they arrested her, they thought she was finished. But they arrested her sister, and brothers risked their lives to go into the jail, bring her out, to go out of prison. So when you come to fight against an enemy, you must think differently from the enemy. And the only way you can think differently from the enemy is when you're rooted in your culture. When you are proud of your culture, and when you properly understand that the struggle here is really a cultural struggle. Because in the final analysis, all struggles are struggles of ideas, and all ideas come from the given culture in which they find themselves. We cannot have an organization unless we have an ideology. And all organizations have them. Fraternities have them, sororities have them, churches have them, social clubs, everyone has them. America has it. It may be defined to you, or it may not be defined, but it has it. If Clinton comes today and says, all right, we're going to Baghdad, pick up your guns, people who believe in the American capitalist system instinctively will pick up their guns and march to Baghdad. They may not even know why, but it's the ideology that drives them there. If you're a Christian, a true Christian, you will not cheat. You may not know why you do not cheat, but it's because if you're a true Christian, I don't know about a jive Christian. I'm about a jive Christian. What about a serious Christian? You know, one who really follows what they say they follow. I mean, you couldn't cheat. The reason you can't cheat is because the ideology of Christianity imposes itself upon you. That's for us to have organization, we must have ideology. Our party has been clear. We fought many battles in this since the 1960s. We've been telling them Marxism-Leninism is a good ideology, but it comes out of the culture of Europe. It cannot be good for us. They call us racist. They call us narrow nationalists. They call us chauvinists. Could you imagine that? We ain't got no power. We got all these big names. told them clearly, it cannot be. Because the culture of Africa is different from the culture of Europe, as it's different from the culture of China. Doesn't mean in hostility too, just different. Woman is different from man. Doesn't mean hostile to. Only the social conditions make it so. Your ideology must come from your culture. It's only when your ideology comes from your culture that you begin to think differently from the enemy that you can really move. If you're thinking the same way the enemy is thinking, the enemy's solutions become your solution. Just you end up by saying, yeah, America's a great country and, you know, well, it's a little bit racist, but, you know, after all. But if you think from your people's struggle, and you know that your people are the victims of racism, have been, always will be, you say, as long as America remains racist, I've got to destroy it. You say you must think from your people's culture. Thus, to have fundamentals of unity, we must have an African ideology. Because unity presupposes organization. And unless the organization is guided by African thought, hear me well, which is a result of African actions, hear me well, there will be nothing but confusion. And we repeat, the only way we'll be free is when we first conquer the political kingdom. And we give the proposal that this conquering must be done by a mass party. Thus, for us, the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, the only way we will solve our problem here as well is when every African belongs to the same political party from South Carolina to Zambia. Now, everyone agrees with this. Some people say it's impossible. Could you imagine that? You know, I'm a good Democrat with a small d. I believe that people have the right to think and what they want to think, but even the Bible tells you that you can sin against God in thought, word, and deed. And you can sin against your people in thought, word, and deed. Anytime you think that your people cannot be united, you sin against them. The other day having a discussion, brother said, oh, Africa will never be united. I said, you're lucky I don't have a gun. I could shoot you just for saying that. He said, oh, right, you have a right to say everything you have a right to say, but there's some things you don't go out the limit of. You must understand freedom of speech. All freedom of speech is bounded by the ideology. If we were in a church today, and we all believe in God, and it was communion, or we were in a mosque, and we were having Friday prayers, and somebody came into the church or the mosque and started cursing God and insulting God, he could get killed for freedom of speech. All freedom of speech is bounded by its ideology. If we're having Bible class here, there will never be a discussion of, does God exist? That will never arise. Once you get in the church, God exists, end of discussion. That's a fact. Consequently, you must know that freedom of speech is bounded by the ideology. And if we are saying that we want to organize Africans all over the world, and the enemy is saying it can't be done, and you come and you say the same thing, you're working for the enemy. That's why we say when you think, you have to think differently from the enemy. Oh, there's so much problems we have. We'll never get out of these problems. I don't see how we can go. I don't see what we can do. Are you talking like the enemy? You sound just like the enemy. Matter of fact, are they paying you? No, I don't. You're working for nothing. I mean, I thought slavery was over. At least I thought today we were slaves for a wage. But you're going back to chattel. You ain't even getting no wage. At least if you're a slave today, get a wage. Yes. Yeah. You have to think differently. The only way you can think differently from the enemy is when your culture, which is opposed to the enemy, gives you your ideas, and you become the personification of these ideas. Our people will be unified. Africa, we say, no force will stop her from the unification process. The only question you must ask yourself is the one we always pose to all Africans. What contribution will you make to your people's organization process? What contribution will you actively make to the unification process of your people? This contribution must be made in total dialectic opposition to the enemy's thought. American capitalist system teaches us all the time that The real beauty of life, the highest goal in life, is to work, achieve something, and then stop working and enjoy what you've worked for. Just relax. I mean, it gets so terrible that college students, once they graduate from college, don't read books anymore. God, I graduated, now I got my paper. Frederick Douglass said, where there's no struggle, there is no progress. Progress is eternal. Progress is eternal. If progress is eternal, struggle is eternal. Not only is struggle eternal, a conscious man, a conscious woman looks for more struggle every day, because the more struggle you confront, the stronger you become, the more you know, the more confident you are, the better able you are to serve your people. If I'm an eye doctor, when I graduate from university and become a doctor, I can do simple things. If I never challenge doing complicated operations, I will never advance. I will stay exactly where I am. And the only way I will advance is by confronting and even making errors, perhaps making somebody blind while trying to save them. Yes, everybody makes errors. But unless you take that step, you'll never be able to save somebody who's going blind. And maybe after making 3 people blind, you'll be able to save every other patient that comes to you. We say that we must not only look for struggle, but every day we must look for greater struggle, more challenging struggle. If I know 2 plus 2 is 4, unless I struggle with 4 plus 4, I will never know it's 8. I will stay at 2 plus 2. We say you must think directly different from the enemy. But those of us who come to struggle mustn't struggle like the way the enemy tells us. Jump up now, make some struggle, then you'll get a position and sit down and enjoy life. That's what happens. Now, in fact, those who don't struggle get the position of power and they say, okay, brothers, everything is cool, I'm the mayor. Relax, I got it covered. We must look for more struggle. To have unity, we must have organization. To have organization, we must have ideology coming from our culture. For us to be united as a mass people, we must have mass organization. Each of us must make our contribution. We repeat, if you don't join our organization, join any organization working for your people's unity. And if you don't find one, make one. One thing is clear, until we're organized, we will not be free. And since we're going to be free, we will be organized. Make your contribution to your people's liberation movement. Thank you.
Now I'll give you the introduction. You know, this brother never ceases to amaze me. If you think he's just talking like this, no. From the time I knew him in Howard campus, when he graduated, he did not go and look for a job. In fact, the job he took was the hardest job that exists. He went into the South to organize in a voters registration campaign. Now, those of you from the South know what the South is like, right? This brother, young brother, of course he said he came from Harlem and he thought he was tough. Those were the days when they were still lynching people. And part of the voters registration campaign was to take the young sisters and brothers down into the South, where the Ku Klux Klan was still raising H and kicking A. And when you get down there, they were not playing. He, among others, went down there. So when he talked like this is not something that he's just talking about. He's lived it. He knows these brutes. And he's gotten a couple of knocks. I gave him some pictures the last 2 years ago where we met, where he had some little bruises on his head. And this was going on for a long time. This brother has been in the struggle. So when you talk about a people's revolutionary, this is it. So sisters and brothers, I think that we should energize the African revolutionary spirit in this brother, and thank him and continue to strengthen him. Thank you, my brother. I know he will not make any claims, but one of the individuals who brought Martin Luther King into focus is this brother. I'm sure you see the documentary that Gil has when King made his famous speech, why oppose the war in Vietnam, and you saw him in the front row urging on, get him Martin. Remember that? So, I mean, the brother is clear, and I'm sure that we all had a lesson today. You have to be willing to pay for your lessons. I was speaking to one of my cousins, and they credit out at Seton Hall. We only can charge you $3. Run the 340 by Kwame before he leaves. He has some work to do in Guinea, and I'm sure that we'll be willing to help him. Whilst he's resting, for your information, next week we'll be having Runoko Rashidi. It is strongly advised that you check this lecture out, because this is preparatory to a brother we'll be bringing in March from India. Now you always hear that Nigeria has the most Africans in any one place, and Brazil outside Africa. In India, they have over 200 million of us who are being subjected to the most barbarous treatment ever. And of course, the sisters and brothers all over getting it. But when this brother comes here, you'll see who Mahatma Gandhi was. We're going to do an expose of Mahatma Gandhi. And Baba Shinda has done some preparatory work. Check Baba Shinda out, and you'll see who Gandhi is. Gandhi is not who he was propped up to be. Gandhi was a Nazi. You willing to deal? Gandhi was a Nazi. And Gandhi organized Indians in Azania, South Africa, colonial name, to suppress black people. Gandhi. Now we're not going to blame our brother because he had the information, but it's time that we expose Gandhi for one simple reason. The Brahmins in this country are now making a move to get a statue of Gandhi erected in where? Washington, D.C. You ready for that? In Washington, D.C., of all places. There's none of Martin Luther King. Of course, there'll never be none of Malcolm X, so that's not up for discussion. But they are making a move to have a statue of Gandhi in the District of Columbia. No, you know that's a non-starter. And we have to get those chocolate city folks to start organizing and get that nonsense out. In fact, it can be done for the simple reason that an attempt was made to rename Polk Street in Atlanta after Gandhi. Is Brother Edie here? Did you leave? Brother Edie? Okay. And the sisters and brothers from the local community organized the people. Who was heading that move? A very good and dear friend of yours, Coretta Scott King. And the people had to move on the city council and get them to crush this whole idea of naming a street in Atlanta after Gandhi. So it is important that you understand the dynamics that are moving around here. Make sure you check the lecture next week and you'll get an idea of the kind of struggles of African people in Australia. And of course you know that there is not one Tasmanian alive today. In Tasmania, all the people were wiped out. In fact, it got so bad that after a while they used to hold parties, crush the bones of the Tasmanians and eat them, these same Europeans. And when you talk about cannibalism, you know the story about Dama, right? And then they accuse us of being cannibals. So make sure that you check the program next week. Now, besides the book Black Power, which is on sale in the back, and the brother will be available to autograph it, there's another book on Haiti. And I'm glad that the brother made mention of the African Revolution in Haiti. There's a book, The Irritated Genie by Jacob Carruthers. And you've heard me reading the prayer from Bookman Duthie several times. That book is also available in the back, The Irritated Genie. And what that book does is gives you a very good focus on how the Africans were able to organize and succeed in that revolution that he spoke about. They had two goals, reciprocity and vindication. So when those Europeans came on the island, they were waiting for them because they were willing to reciprocate and they were willing to vindicate everything that those brutes had done to their ancestors. Now along the line, a lot of them got misguided, and as a result, you find Haiti in the condition today. But it will be reorganized, it will be. Because that spirit, the spirit of Bookman, the spirit of Dessalines, the spirit of Henri Christophe, is still there. It's still there, and it will be reorganized. Brother Edie, I was just looking for you. When you said you wanted to go back to Georgia, I hope you know that when you go back to Georgia, you have to do some fighting. Because they were about to name a street in Atlanta after Gandhi. And we were talking about Gandhi like a dog. So even if you run from here, you still got some work to do in Atlanta, okay? Just remember that. No, but you still got to fight. Well, you still got to struggle there because they still got some crackers in the bush. You got to clear out. No, I know you can take care. I know you can take care of them. That's why I'm pulling your coat. Yes. Any other announcements? Oh yeah, Sister Imani. Come on. This is for the youngsters. And of course we have a number of parents. Sister Imani has this announcement to make. I'm sorry. Sister Imani, why didn't you remind me? Sister Juanita.
She can make it next week.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters. We had a wonderful demonstration earlier of discipline and training for our young people. And of course, our guest speaker today has further challenged us. African Echoes is sponsoring a study group series for young people, for junior high and high school age youth, to free their African minds. This came out of a study group of adults that studied civilizational barbarism under Professor Yolandi Ugeni in October through December of 1992. We have 5 sessions for these young people on Saturday, starting in March. And we are looking for names of young people that will come forward. The tuition and registration fee is $50. We're looking for sponsors also to help with the scholarship for some of these young people. How many of you know from 7th through 12th graders who could benefit by a study group series? We all could, yes, we could. And we will also even take names of adults who would like to have another study group series under Professor Ugeni, who is the official translator of Civilizational Barbarism by Cheikh Diop. He translated it from French to English for us. The topics include Africa, the birthplace of humanity, how Egypt civilized Europe and Asia, your cultural identity and how to fight cultural aggression, and Pan-Africanism. So these are all important topics that will help our young people to be ready for the struggle that they must carry on for us. There'll be 5 2-hour sessions on Saturdays from 11 to 1 right here at St. Rocco School. So who could ask for more? I'll be in the back at a table. Please see me to get more information about this. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the brothers and sisters today. Today we collected $200. That's the most we ever collected. That brings us up to a total of $2,765. One more thing I'd like to call Barbara up here. Barbara Small, could you come up here for a second? This is a tireless sister here. This sister here has been in the educational system, and she's been working with me in the refill since the beginning. She's been out sick for maybe a month and a half, 2 months, but whenever she can, she makes it here, even if she has to hobble with a cane. What I did today was basically go around to everybody that I see here regularly on a regular basis. If I miss anybody here that comes every week and we know who we are, please see the sister and sign this card. I had everybody here to sign. Like the brother Ture here said, we have to organize and look at each other's family. So when she gets sick, we all got sick. So I had everybody that I know that knows her, that knows me, to sign this card, and I'd like to give it to this sister right here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm very surprised. I wasn't expecting anything, but I'm very glad to be back. I'm very glad to see all the brothers and sisters out, and I couldn't miss Brother Kwame Ture tonight. I had to come this evening, so I put in a special effort to try to be here, and I'm going to try to continue to be here every Sunday. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Removal of sanctions, and he has already anointed himself as the first president of the country. How do you see the types of behavior he's exhibiting impacting on the inevitable children that must come in Brazil?
The question is one that I cannot properly answer with the audience before me. The reason is that in order for us to properly discuss that, we must know exactly Israelito y Africa. We must know who was Sebukwe. We must know the role played by the first political prisoners in Azania, South Africa, which was not Mandela.
We did the work already here.
Well, if you did the work, we have to ask you a question.
No, there's some people who need to...
Well, then these people don't have that education. No, because really, assuming that assuming the accusations are correct, assuming they're correct, it means that there's a really lot of explanation necessary to show the difference. For example, do people know what they mean by in Azania, whom they call charterists, what they mean by a charterist? Do people know what they mean by the land question? We can just say fundamentally, Malcolm X told us that when you introduce the question of land, you speak of revolution. And if you will look, you will see all reformists never speak of land, but revolutionaries speak of land. And I think that if we would understand this, we would look and see this one of the basic contradictions in Azania, South Africa, between the liberation movements. Those who are reformists and those who are revolutionaries. Those who seek reform of the political system and those who seek ownership of the land to institute their own political system. Within this framework then, assuming the analysis is correct, that people have the information, I think they'd be able to answer your questions properly. Please, brother. Kwame Ture.
Speaking of the unification of Africa, what would the Arab element on the continent, what would they have to contribute to the unification process? Thank you.
We must understand that when we speak of Africa, we speak in the first instance of the land mass, from Cairo to Cape. We've heard discussions here of Professor Cheikh Anta Diop. And one of the theories that Cheikh Anta Diop has is that Egypt is to African history what Greece is to European history. This is a direct quote from Cheikh Anta Diop. As an African, I cannot think of leaving Egypt out of Africa. This is clear. There are some who do not have a clear perspective. They just want to cut it off, leave it up there. No, me, Egypt, I know what Cheikh Anta Diop says is correct. Egypt is not only the foundation here for Africa, but indeed the great civilizing force of the entire world. Therefore, I have no intentions of leaving Egypt out. We are involved in a war. We have a war on many fronts. We have to fight against Zionism, we have to fight against imperialism, we have to fight against colonialism, we have to fight against neocolonialism, we have to fight against our own puppets, and assuming that we also have to fight against the Arab North, okay? I've named just a couple of fronts we have to fight on. We are totally disorganized. If one is speaking logically, in terms of a scientific position in a struggle, seeing it in forces, one would know that we cannot fight all of them at the same time. Logically, we must come to fight some while we either try to hold others at bay, neutralize them, or try to transform them to our struggle. This is logics. The contradiction which exists between north of Africa and south of Africa, if one is concerned with all of Africa, should be made a non-antagonistic contradiction. The contradiction which exists between Africa and imperialism, the contradiction which exists between Africa and Zionism, the contradiction which exists between Africa and settler colonialism, the contradiction which exists between Africa and neo-colonialism, this contradiction must be an antagonistic contradiction. As a matter of fact, if we understand this properly, those on the north of Africa must take a position against Zionism, must take a position against imperialism. This is an objective reality. Logic, if we are properly assuming the position of a revolutionary fighter, not based on sentiment and emotion, will tell us, let us try and bring these people in the north together with us while we both fight against imperialism, while we both fight against Zionism. Let's knock these down. If at that time we have not transformed their behavior into harmony with the African Revolution, then we can square off. All right.
How are you doing? Thank you for the speech today. Okay, could you give me and the rest of us some steps that we would have to take to organize? Okay, the first 1 through 10, 1 through 4, whatever.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
For organization, for any organization, you need only 3 things. For any organization, you need only 3 things. 1, ideology. That is to say, the ideas to which everybody in the organization agree. If one is a Christian, the Christian doctrine is there. If one agrees with it, one accepts it, one internalizes it, one belongs to the Christian organization, Islam. Even a fraternity, a sorority, has its ideology. If you're a brother in the frat and another brother's in trouble, you must do everything able to help that other brother in the frat. Understand? Once you have that, you become. So all organizations must have ideology, ideas which everybody accepts, even if it's lip service. The second, you must have people. And the third, you must have people faithful to this ideology. Because depending upon the people's faith and fidelity to the ideology will depend upon the strength of the organization. If in a Christian church, everybody was faithful to the Christian principles like Jesus Christ, nobody could touch that church. If in a mosque, everybody is faithful to the principles of Islam like Prophet Muhammad, nobody could touch that mosque. If in a revolution, everybody is faithful to the revolutionary ideals, nobody could touch the revolution. Thus, these are the 3 things you need for any organization: ideology, people, and people faithful to the line. Once you have this, then all you need are people who have nothing else in their life to do except to preach the gospel and attract people into the organization. And this preaching of the gospel must be constant. This preaching of the gospel must be constant. You must not think our people are disorganized because we don't like to be organized. We are disorganized because we have propaganda which is ubiquitous, which is constant, which keeps us disorganized. And we must be constant. For example, when you get thirsty in this country, you say, give me a Coke. You might think that you thought of that. But every time you wake up, drink a Coke, have a Coke, this is Coke, Coke is good, have Coke, like Coke, Coke gives you energy, Coke, 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 give me a Coke. We must be as enthusiastic as the enemy in our propagandizing efforts of the masses of our people. We must be as proud to tell the people join the organization as Coca-Cola is of selling Cokes. Thus, constant political education is the answer once the 3 prerequisites have been set for the organization.
Thank you very much, brother. Brother Kwame, we're available to photograph and back. Let's again thank the brother.
Last question for the sister. That's for the sister. You got to get up to the sister.
I haven't been here in months.
Well, I know if that's good or bad.
I just want to ask you 2 things quickly, Kwame. What is your perception of what they're doing in Somalia? I mean, what is the main objection? I want to ask you, do you think the Governor Aristide will be installed, or will he have to compromise himself?
Let me take the second question first. The slogan of the French Revolution was La haine éternelle pour la France. Eternal hatred for France. This was the slogan of the Haitian Revolution. We don't study our history, that's our problem. We take it from television. Every revolutionary knows that in the struggle, a bullet will find you at any minute. And every revolution must know that when it's time for you to take your bullet, you must take it so that your blood must nourish the revolution. Of course, retreating and dodging a bullet and running from a bullet marked for you is not the same thing. Reverend Aristide, when he was saved by the French ambassador in Haiti. After being saved by the French ambassador in Haiti, he looked to American intervention to place him back into power. I think that when President Aristide was overthrown, if he didn't take the bullet to let his blood nourish the revolution, then the first country he should have gone to was Cuba. I think rather than this, without the best of intentions that he may have as a preacher, and I'll tell him as I tell everybody else, revolution is not based on sentiment. It is not a question of belief. It is a scientific reality. Its principles must be studied, understood, and properly applied. Now, one of these first principles is that your blood can nourish the revolution. Martin Luther King could have dodged a bullet, but he knew his blood had to nourish the revolution. Malcolm X could. Anybody can. And I think that Aristide's blood would have nourished the revolution in Haiti. If Aristides had taken the bullet there and then, I promise you, as Africa is my mother, the masses would have risen up and read Banks' organization. He didn't take the bullet, no problem. But to think that he can save himself because he is so important for the revolution and put his hands in American imperialism or French and ask them to take him back means that there's no advance here for the Haitian revolution. This is a fact. As to Somalia, I'm sorry that you did come a little bit late, but we had discussed it briefly in the beginning. But essentially, it is just to show that Africans are incapable of running their Africa, being independent, so they have to be put back into order and run by others. Of course, the problem of oil in Somalia, which was bought by one of Bush's friends in Texas there 2 years ago. Nobody knows of, but of course the problem is there. Anyway, one thing is clear. American imperialism, anywhere going to save Africans, must be known for what it is. They lie not some of the time, but all of the time. Come in.